So from budget blunders and medical curveballs to Tour de France shakeups, high-stakes gold miners, and hackers slipping through our Treasury firewall, today's news is all about digital breaches, legacies on the line, and surprise partnerships that just might work. My friends, this is Daily Bagel, the only morning show that you need to head into the weekend on the best of notes. Let's get into it. And kicking us off with current affairs, South Africa's National Treasury is the latest victim in a global wave of cyber attacks after malware was discovered on one of its key systems this week. Now, this breach affected the infrastructure reporting model, which is Treasury's online platform for monitoring public infrastructure. So in response to this, the servers have been immediately isolated and Microsoft have been called in to help assess whether other systems are at risk. So these attackers reportedly exploited a flaw in Microsoft's SharePoint software that let them steal these special access keys, essentially allowing them to pose as trusted users and then move freely through these sensitive systems. Now, interestingly enough, this is the same vulnerability that's been used to breach US nuclear agencies. Now, Microsoft blames Chinese state-backed hackers, and believe it or not, Beijing denies it. Now remember, this is not a once-off event. In recent years, SAA, our Bureau of Standards, and even South Africa's own Defense Department has been targeted. Treasury is just the latest in this growing list of critical state infrastructure and the digital siege. And when hackers start going for our financial department, that's not just a security issue, that's a full-blown national security threat. And next up, this past week, Parliament has officially passed our appropriation bill, which is like this final legal step that unlocks this year's national budget. Now keep in mind, it's almost August. Anyways, without it, the plans for Budget 3.0 would have just stayed on paper. No salaries, no infrastructure, and no services. And had it failed, Treasury warned that government would have run out of money by October. But now keep in mind that the bill almost didn't make it. You see, the DA threatened to block key votes unless President Ramaphosa removed our higher education minister, citing corruption allegations and concerns about her control over public funds. And to everyone's surprise, he did at the beginning of the week. And by Wednesday, the bill passed with 262 votes in favor. But while all 10 GNU parties voted yes, the debate exposed growing tensions inside the coalition. You see, parties backed the bill but made it clear that they weren't thrilled. The DA called it a win for accountability. Others like Action SA and the MK Party accused the GNU of selling out. Now, either way, the budget is through, but if this session was any clue, this governing unity might be a little less united than it looks. And on to our quickfire mentions, FlySafair pilot talks have made headway, with Union Solidarity confirming some progress after days of deadlock. Now, flights do remain reduced, but SAA is covering key routes until a final deal is reached. And Joburg has launched its first real-world vehicle emission study using these roadside sensors to track pollution across Gauteng. Now, this data will reportedly guide clean air policies and possibly new restrictions on older, high-emission cars. And onto our finance section, Adcock Ingram, the folks behind Panado, just got a surprise 4.2 billion rand offer from Indian drug maker Natco Pharma. And if this goes through, Adcock's heading for the exit off the JSE and into private hands. So Natco is reportedly offering 75 rand per share to buy 36.5% of the company, the exact chunk not already owned by Bidvest, who holds the other 64%. Now, if shareholders accept the deal, Adcock will delist from the stock exchange, and the two firms will essentially split ownership 64-36 if the deal is approved. Now, most analysts expected Bidvest to make the final buyout themselves. Instead, they've seemed to stay quiet, effectively opening up the door for Natco to step in. So some of you are probably wondering, why would Natco want in? Simply put, it comes down to supply chains. Adcock still imports most of its ingredients from Europe, paying in euros and selling in rands. Natco's Indian manufacturing base could offer cheaper access to pharma inputs, as well as open up the door to expansion. Now for Adcock, this seems to be less of a buyout and more of a opportunity, a partner that brings scale and sourcing muscle. And for Bidvest, I know it's a bit of a curveball move that just added some serious value without them having to lift a finger. And on to our quick fire mentions. Both Goldman Sachs and Investec expect rate cuts in 2025, citing tame inflation and weak demand. Now, Goldman's penciled in 3 more rate cuts this year, but warns that the Reserve Bank may still play it cautious. And Blue Label says that Chelsea's turnaround strategy is nearly done, with a new holding company now finalized. A separate JSE listing for Chelsea is back on the table, and Blue Label will hold a minority stake. And on to our sports section. My friends, let me start by saying I am not a cycling fan. However, giving credit where credit is due, these Tour de France cyclists have to be some of the greatest athletes of all time. So the 2025 Tour de France wraps up this weekend, and unless something dramatic happens, Tadej Pogačar is set to secure his 4th Tour title. But this final stretch still matters. You see, today's stage heads into the Alps with a string of punishing climbs. Saturday offers one last shot for the breakaway riders, and then Sunday's grand finale in Paris breaks usual tradition, ending with 3 steep circuits instead of a flat sprint. So if you've been watching the Tour, it's no secret that Pogačar has looked in control all month, but Jonas Vingegaard is still chasing in second, a couple minutes behind, and these next few climbs are his last chance to pounce. And what you'll also notice is that this week has taken its toll on the peloton. Big names like Remco Evenepoel, Mathieu van der Poel, and Carlos Rodriguez have all withdrawn, down by injury, illness, or exhaustion. And for South African fans, there's sadly no local rider in this year's peloton. Louis Monkeys didn't make the cut. But anyways, if Pogačar can hold on, this weekend is set to carve his name deeper into cycling history. And between you and me, if you guys have never been interested or just don't know much about the Tour de France, there is that docuseries on Netflix. Highly recommend. And on to our quick fire mentions. The Proteas have named their white ball squads for next month's tour in Australia, with explosive top order batters R4bn, Pretorius and Brevis both included. Now this is a big step for Pretorius, who has yet to make his debut, and a big chance for Brevis to finally lock down his spot. And the SA20 auction is heating up after big names like Andre Russell and Nicholas Pourin have confirmed for next season. Meanwhile, Aiden Markram has thrown himself into the open auction pool, and so his old team can only keep him if they outbid the rest. And before we continue, here is your Bagel Bite of the day. And my friends, this is the last one of the week. Let's end it in the win column. The question is, where does the rand, the name of the South African currency, actually come from? Is it A, a Dutch word for ridge, B, a mining company, or C, a gold prospector's surname? We'll give you the answer at the end of the show. And on to our wildcard section. Johannesburg was built on gold, and according to new research, it's still sitting on a fortune. You see, above ground, researchers have found that Joburg's iconic mining dumps, you know those orange hills of waste rock left by decades of deep mining? Well, they could be sitting on 450 billion rand worth of invisible gold. And so that's gold so tiny that it's trapped inside minerals like pyrite and missed by current extraction methods. But a 27-year-old South African researcher named Steve Chungwaru reckons that he's cracked the code. You see, his PhD showed how we could theoretically reprocess that waste to safely extract far more gold. And since his findings went public last year, he's had offers from mining giants in South Africa, Australia, Germany, the US, and more. Now, underground though, there is a far different race going on, and I didn't know about this. There are reportedly thousands of informal miners known as Zama-Zamas who are still digging through the 6,000 abandoned shafts beneath the city. Now, as you can expect, this is deadly work, collapsing tunnels, turf wars, and police forces allegedly more interested in bribes than arrests. Sounds like a Netflix series. And as for that Bagel Bite, the answer is A Dutch word for ridge. Now, the rand is named after the Witwatersrand, which is the ridge where gold was discovered in 1886 and where Joburg was built. Pretty fitting for a currency that was literally born from gold. And my friends, that's it for today's show, and that's it for the week. What a week. I hope you guys have a great Friday and an even better weekend. Take care of yourselves, enjoy your downtime, and I'll see you all same time on Monday morning. Catch you guys then. Cheers.